What is a disturbing fact you wish you could unlearn?
When the Challenger exploded in 1986, the astronauts didn't die from the explosion. Nor did they die from depressurization as NASA has initially claimed. There is some evidence they turned on their personal oxygen supply. They died from impact when they hit the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. They were in free fall for 2.5 minutes.
Not only that, but NASA was fully aware of the dangers of the launch. Engineers at NASA warned officials time and time again that the fuel O-ring would fail if they launched at such a low temperature. It was pretty frigid the day of the launch, and they ignored them, just because they didn't want to have to push back the launch date.
Parrots often bond with a keeper, from their perspective, as a lifelong romantic partner. If the person dies, or the parrot is displaced, they can go into massive depression and pluck out their own feathers.
That's just downright sad.
Our neighbor passed and her macaw stopped eating and eventually died.
I learned on Reddit that a woodpecker will tap enough to break into a baby bird's skull and slurp up their brains.
How many skulls could a woodpecker peck if a woodpecker wanted to sat its lust for baby bird brains?
If you have an intestinal blockage, you can burp up farts and have fecal vomit, which is basically just throwing up your poop.
When I was a child, my grandmother told me this about one of her potential side effects if she didn't visit the doctor for her condition, and I laughed it off as if she was joking. In most cases, when a parasite gets into the brain, they don't remove it. They just kill it with some sort of acid or something with a similar effect, then just let the body calcify it. It's weird cause you'd think that the parasite could still do something. Edit. They don't kill it with acid.
My mother has a cousin, honestly not sure but a family member, who got a parasite from eating bad meat on a trip to Mexico. They couldn't remove it as it's burrowed into her brain, so it's still there till this day and she's dying. It's really sad. Last I heard was her mental health was declining rapidly. The Chiquita Banana Company colluded with the CIA to overthrow the democratically elected government of Guatemala, leading to a civil war that lasted 46 years and directly contributed to the ongoing migrant crisis at the border. They called it Operation PB Success.
They also blocked a 9/11 victims bill because it would have made it so victims of terrorism could sue companies or countries that funded said terrorists. You see where this is going. Chiquita funded militant groups in Colombia for decades. They claimed it was protection money, but they also gave the militants a list of union leaders for them to kill. Oh yeah, and the Banana Massacre, when they led to the deaths of thousands of plantation workers. All because they unionized to push for things like being paid and having toilets.
Joseph Fritzel, the man who imprisoned his daughter in an underground cellar for 24 years and RPD'd her approximately 3,000 times.
My disturbing fact is thinking about how many cases like this are going on right now that we don't know about or won't know about.
What? Excuse me, what the F? That's being RPD once every 3 days or so. I don't know what to say. Hope he's in jail for life.
My biology teacher had a Q&A session before Christmas, and one student asked if it's possible to be allergic to your own blood. Unfortunately, you can. Just imagine your own immune system destroying your red blood cells, constant hemorrhaging, constantly feeling cold and out of breath. When we got back from winter break, we saw a new face in class, a former student of my bio teacher who just so happened to have this disease, and we spent the whole class asking questions. I feel so bad for the guy, but thankfully the medicine available to suppress the immune system has made his life bearable.
My college roommate had a similar condition you can look up called DVT, or Behçet's disease. There is medicine to suppress his white blood cells, but yeah, it's still incurable and he's going to have to take them for life. Cool part, when this dude catches a cold or something, because he's always suppressing his immune system, he has to stop taking his medicines and his Ultra WBCs fix him back up, laughing face.
Yogurt is useful for decomposing dead bodies, since it's already got concentrated and pre-cultured bacteria.
Send him to the yogurt chamber.
The fact that dogs like squeaky toys because it sounds like their prey crying out in pain.
We tried to give my dog squeaky toys for the first few years we had her, but the moment it let out a squeak she would let go, start nosing it and licking it in concern, and never bite it again. We stopped buying her those because it was causing her too much guilt. She's an angel. Where's that rabies post?
You mean that very detailed story about how rabies kills you and how your brain literally melts from it? No. Not that. Edit. Found the post. It was a comment in r about someone feeding a panda. https://www.reddit.com/r/comment/811r6f/he_underscore_fed_school_the_kute_school_trash_school_panda_and UTM_source=share and context=3.
You asked. Rabies. It's exceptionally common, but people just don't run into the animals that carry it often. Skunks especially, and bats. Let me paint you a picture. You go camping, and at midday you decide to take a nap in a nice little hammock. While sleeping, a tiny brown bat, in the rage stages of infection, is fidgeting in broad daylight, uncomfortable, and thirsty, due to the hydrophobia, and you snort, startling him. He goes into attack mode. Except you're asleep, and he's a little brown bat, so weighs around 6 grams. You don't even feel him land on your bare knee, and he starts to bite. His teeth are tiny, hardly enough to even break the skin, but he does manage to give you the equivalent of a tiny SCRP that goes completely unnoticed. Rabies does not travel in your blood. In fact, a blood test won't even tell you if you've got it. Antibody tests may be done, but are useless if you've ever been vaccinated. You wake up, none the wiser. If you notice anything at the bite site at all, you assume you just lightly SCRP'd it on something. The bomb has been lit, and your nervous system is the wick. The rabies will multiply along your nervous system, doing virtually no damage and completely undetectable. You literally have no symptoms. It may be 4 days, it may be a year, but the camping trip is most likely long forgotten. Then one day your back starts to ache. Or maybe you get a slight headache. At this point, you're already dead. There is no cure. The sole caveat to this is the Milwaukee Protocol, which leaves most patients dead anyway, and the survivors mentally disabled, and is seldom done. There's no treatment. It has a 100% kill rate. Absorb that. Not a single other virus on the planet has a 100% kill rate. Only rabies. And once you're symptomatic, it's over. You're dead. So what does that look like? Your headache turns into a fever, and a general feeling of being unwell. You're fidgety, uncomfortable, and scared, as the virus that has taken its time getting into your brain finds a vast network of nerve endings. It begins to rapidly reproduce, starting at the base of your brain, where your pons is located. This is the part of the brain that controls communication between the rest of the brain and body, as well as sleep cycles. Next you become anxious. You still think you have only a mild fever, but suddenly you find yourself becoming scared, even horrified, and it doesn't occur to you that you don't know why. This is because the rabies is chewing up your amygdala. As your cerebellum becomes hot with the virus, you begin to lose muscle coordination and balance. You think maybe it's a good idea to go to the doctor now, but assuming a doctor is smart enough to even run the tests necessary in the few days you have left on the planet, odds are they'll only be able to tell your loved ones what you died of later. You're twitchy, shaking, and scared. You have the normal fear of not knowing what's going on, but with the virus really effing the amygdala, this is amplified 100-fold. It's around this time the hydrophobia starts. You're horribly thirsty, you just want water. But you can't drink. Every time you do, your throat clamps shut and you vomit. This has become a legitimate, active fear of water. You're thirsty, but looking at a glass of water begins to make you gag, and shy back in fear. The contradiction is hard for your hot brain to see at this point. By now, the doctors will have to put you on IVs to keep you hydrated, but even that's futile. You were dead the second you had a headache. You begin hearing things, or not hearing at all as your thalamus goes. You taste sounds, you see smells, everything starts feeling like the most horrifying acid trip anyone has ever been on. With your hippocampus long under attack, you're having trouble remembering things, especially family. You're alone, hallucinating, thirsty, confused, and absolutely, undeniably terrified. Everything scares the literal poo out of you at this point. These strange people in lab coats. These strange people standing around your bed crying, who keep trying to get you, drink something, and crying. And it's only been about a week since that little headache that you've completely forgotten. Time means nothing to you anymore. Funny enough, you now know how the bat felt when he bit you. Eventually, you slip into the dumb rabies phase. Your brain has started the process of shutting down. Too much of it has been turned to liquid virus. Your face droops. You drool. You're all but unaware of what's around you. A sudden noise or light might startle you, but for the most part, it's all you can do to just stare at the ground. You haven't really slept for about 72 hours. Then you die. Always, you die. And there's not one effing thing anyone can do for you. Then there's the question of what to do with your corpse. I mean, sure, burying it is the right thing to do. But the effing virus can survive in a corpse for years. You could kill every rabid animal on the planet today, and if 2 years from now, some moist, preserved, rotten hunk of used-to-be brain gets eaten by an animal, it starts all over. So yeah, rabies scares the poo out of me. And it's effing everywhere. Source: spent a lot of time working with rabies. Would still get my vaccinations if I could afford them. Editing to add continuation from op of this copypasta, Zeri masterpiece. Each time this gets reposted, there is a ton of misinformation that follows by people who simply don't know, or have heard, information, from others who were ill-informed. Only X number of people have died in the US in the past X years. Rabies is really rare. Yes, deaths from rabies are rare in the United States, in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 per year. This does not mean rabies is rare. The reason that mortality is so rare in the US is due to a very aggressive treatment protocol of all bite cases in the United States. If you are bitten, and you cannot identify the animal that bit you, or the animal were to die shortly after biting you, you will get post-exposure treatment. That is the protocol. Post-exposure is very effective, almost 100%, if done before you become symptomatic. It involves a series of immunoglobulin shots, many of which are at the site of the bite, as well as the vaccine given over the span of a month. Fun fact: if you're vaccinated for rabies, you may be able to be an immunoglobulin donor. It's not nearly as bad as was rumored when I was a kid. Something about getting shots in the stomach. Nothing like that. In countries without good treatment protocols, rabies is rampant. India alone sees 20,000 deaths from rabies per year. The "why did nobody die of rabies in the past if it's so dangerous?" argument. There were entire epidemics of rabies in the past, so much so that suicide or murder of those suspected to have rabies were common. In North America, the first case of human death by rabies wasn't reported until 1768. This is because rabies does not appear to be native to North America, and it spread very slowly. So slowly, in fact, that until the mid-1990s, it was assumed that Canada and northern New York didn't have rabies at all. This changed when I was personally one of the first to send in a positive rabies specimen, a raccoon, which helped spawn a cooperative US-Canada rabies bait drop sometime between 1995 and 1997, my memory shot. Unfortunately, it was too late. Rabies had already crossed into Canada. There are still, however, some countries, notably Australia, where everything else is trying to kill you, that still does not have rabies. Lots of people have survived rabies using the Milwaukee Protocol. False. One woman did, and she is still recovering to this day, some 16+ years later. There's also the possibility that she only survived due to either a genetic immunity, or possibly even was inadvertently vaccinated some other way. All other treatments ultimately failed. Even the others that were reported as successes eventually succumbed to the virus. Almost all of the attributed survivors actually received post-exposure treatment before becoming symptomatic, and many of them died anyway. Bats don't have rabies all that often. This is just a scare tactic. False. To date, 6% of bats that have been captured, or come into contact with humans were rabid. This number is a lot higher when you consider that it equates to 1 in 17 bats. If the bat is allowing you to touch it, the odds that there's a problem are simply too high to ignore. You have to get the treatment within 72 hours, or it won't work anyway. False. The rabies virus travels via nervous system, and can take several years to reach the brain depending on the path it takes. If you've been exposed, it's never too late to get the treatment, and just because you didn't die in a week does not mean you're safe. A case of a guy incubating the virus for 8 years. At least I live in Australia. No. Please, please, please stop posting bad information every time this comes up. Rabies is not something to be shrugged off. And sadly, this kind of misinformation killed a 6-year-old just this Sunday. Stop it. Edit. Original post https://www.reddit.com/r/r/6f/he_fed_cute_crash_core_up_for_UTM_source share and UTM_medium=ios_app and UTM_name=iosmf and context =3 closing parenthesis by U. Zeri masterpiece. They deserve the upvotes. Awards. Michael Scott also has a race for the cure if you'd like to donate to a good cause.
Jeffrey Dahmer drilled a hole into some victims' skulls and tried pouring different toxic liquids into the hole. He was trying to make a sex slave that could eat and drink but could in no way fight back or escape. The worst fact is that victims might survive the first hole with all brain function intact and live long enough to be fully aware they were going to get a second or third hole drilled.
One of the victims managed to escape, the police were called, and somehow the police turned the 14-year-old victim back over to Dahmer. ETA, thanks for the awards. Never gotten this many upvotes before. Wish it wasn't such a sad fact though.
My mom told me I have my grandma's nipples. Edit. Yes. For those asking, I am a dude.
We'll give them back, that's rude. Edit. Thanks kind strangers, I'm glad I was able to give you joy at the beginning of the day. It was great to come back from break to all the awards.
Apparently, Japan bombed China with fleas infected with bubonic plague during World War II. Big rain, I think.
Yeah, it was worse than that. Greater than a powerful report in yesterday's Times recounted the wartime exploits of the Imperial Army's Unit 731 based in China, Japan's principal practitioner of human experiments. Greater than plague-infected fleas were airdropped over Chinese cities, causing epidemics. Cholera and typhoid cultures were poured into wells. Prisoners were dissected alive without anesthetics. Others were subjected to pressure changes that made their bodies literally explode. At least 200,000 Chinese are estimated to have died in these experiments. ... Oh. And this part too. Greater than. But before Americans get self-righteous about Japan's handling of an ugly history, they should ponder Washington's own role in downplaying Unit 731 and other Japanese war crimes. Greater than the United States wanted the Japanese findings about the effects of biological agents on soldiers and civilians available for its own potential military use. It not only exempted the leaders of Unit 731 from trial, but put them on the American payroll. New York Times, The Crimes of Unit 731. March 18, 1995, https://www.nytimes.com/1995/03/18/opinion/the-crimes-of-unit-731.html closing parenthesis.
Often people that fracture their tibia, big shin bone, but not their fibula, thin shin bone, think they're okay to stand up, and when they put weight through that leg then the fibula breaks too.
Right. I forgot legs were shaped like that.
It's actually good to know though lol.
There is a type of insomnia that will kill you. Life expectancy is around a year after onset. FFI, fatal familial insomnia.
I remember seeing a YT channel about a guy who suffered from this, and it was not hard to see him going slowly insane from watching his videos.
Two types, in fact, almost exactly the same. However, FFI is genetic, whereas the other isn't. Both are caused by prions. Terrifying. Edit. Forgot to include that the name of the non-genetic variant is called sporadic fatal insomnia. Enjoy the nightmares.
Any details about the Toy Box Killer's ways of torturing his victims? The guy was a serial rapist, just leave it at that.
I've read the transcript of the tape he played for his victims, and just thinking about it turns my stomach.
Some of the survivors say he wasn't the only person who assaulted them, and they could hear a crowd cheering while they were being RPD. So that means that there are people who were involved who were not caught.
Can you explain this guy in a palatable way such that I don't want to vomit afterwards?
A man named Hisashi Aochi in 1999 suffered immense radiation poisoning after a nuclear accident. In fact, he is known to have taken more radiation poisoning than anyone else in history. Because of this radiation, it messed up his chromosomes as well as his cells and mind system. He was kept alive for 83 days by scientists and doctors. During that time, by day 20, almost all the skin on his body had fallen off, leaving his entire body in constant pain. Later, the skin around his eyes as well as his eyelids also came off, so his eyes were always open even when asleep. His eyes would also something leak blood, making it look as though he was crying. His intestines were so messed up that he started to have constant diarrhea, which soon started to have large amounts of blood because his intestines were starting to decay from the inside. On day 53, his heart stopped 3 times, but scientists and doctors were able to restart it. He was basically only being kept alive by machines at this point, and the doctors started questioning if it would be more humane to let the man die, as he was in very obvious, unimaginable, indescribable levels of pain and suffering. Some doctors even said that it was torture forcing him to live like this. Due to the radiation, almost all the muscles in his body had been destroyed. The only one that wasn't was his heart, which was still being kept alive from the various machines. The worst part of all of this is that Ouchie was completely conscious throughout all of it, and while he couldn't talk due to tubes being in his throat to help him breathe as the radiation also destroyed his lungs, he was in obvious pain every time someone touched him, or even while he was just laying on his bed. And while around the 2-month mark, it's unknown if he even felt pain, as he stopped reacting to being touched as well as stopped thriving in agony 24/7. His pupils still shrank when light was shown into them, suggesting brain activity. Hopefully he did stop feeling pain by then, if not then that makes it even worse. His body around day 80 was quite obviously to anyone at this point unsalvageable, and mold was starting to develop on his skinless body. He was even described as a corpse with a beating heart. So they decided that trying to save him wasn't worth it and pulled his plug. When they did, they studied his body and found out that his organs had all started to decay when he was still alive. All of this and more happened to one man who should have been killed out of mercy for his sake. Hisashi Ouchi has probably had the most painful, tortuous, slowly agony death of all time.
Greater than on day 53, his heart stopped 3 times, but scientists and doctors were able to restart it. He was basically only being kept alive by machines at this point, and the doctors started questioning if it would be more humane to let the man die, as he was in very obvious, unimaginable, indescribable levels of pain and suffering. Some doctors even said that it was torture forcing him to live like this. And yet they still kept him alive for another month. Calling this an absolute nightmare seems like a profound understatement.
This sounds like a creepypasta written in the year 2008.
Starfish can get infected and rip themselves apart.
So the Bikini Bottom horror could be real? Every single fact about bedbugs.
I read a story once about a woman who actually came to Reddit seeking help. She was blacking out every night and terrified. Thought her husband, who was a doctor, was DGing and raping her. Got to the point where she got separated and was looking to divorce, but he swore he wasn't doing anything, and the behavior was completely out of nowhere. One Redditor suggested she go look at her bed, and asked if she saw a bunch of little black dots in the creases. Turns out she had bed bugs so bad they were giving her a strange reaction and giving her effing amnesia every night.
We thought we had bedbugs once, and I've never been so afraid.
My friend's old apartment had to get bug bombed at least 5 times. Every time they'd think it was taken care of, and I'd come to spend the night and get eaten alive. For some reason my blood is like ambrosia to bedbugs. Even the people who lived there didn't get it as bad as I did. I was the canary in the bedbug coal mine. Years later I had an apartment in the city and I found a single bedbug on the wall and had a full-scale panic attack. Somehow I was lucky and it really was just the one, but I was ready to burn my whole life down.
For effing real. Fire is too good for them.
As we all read this on our phones in bed, no less.
TLDR. Don't retire in Vegas. In some states in the USA, particularly Nevada, your doctor can basically sell you to a company. If you're a senior with an untrustworthy doctor, they can throw memory loss, hysteria, confusion, etc. on a piece of paper and hand it over to a company. This company can claim guardianship over you without you ever meeting or hearing of them. And they can take you out of your house, sell your house and all of your belongings, put you in a nursing home and have full control over your finances. They can force you to take medication every day for the rest of your life that make you confused and unable to think clearly, until you die. They can bar your family from visiting you as well. And it's all 100% legal. Before you even find out it's happened to you, there's already been a court hearing where the judge is persuaded into signing your life into some stranger's hands based on your doctor's false claims. Not that I want to unlearn it though. I think more people should know about it.
Isn't that the premise of I Care a Lot?
Yes, and I was so glad they made a movie and put it on Netflix. Watching it pissed me off, but hopefully more people will know about it now.
That children are currently being decapitated in northern Mozambique right now.
That a dolphin committed suicide after falling in love with its handler that used to jerk the dolphin off.
Kinda don't blame him. It's tough to go back to hunting shrimp and dodging orcas in the wild ocean after all you've known for your whole dolphin life as recreational LSD and regular hand jobs.
They also lived together in an otherwise normal house that was half flooded on the first floor. Also, this was all part of a project where NASA was giving LSD to dolphins to teach them to speak English. From what I remember, they were even partially successful. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/margaret_how_love it. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/margaret_how_love it closing parenthesis. Edit. Maybe a bit less than partially successful.
What the F?
Pretty sure they also gave it a bunch of acid. Wild times.
When someone has their head cut off, the screaming when they sever the throat sounds just like pigs. I unfortunately saw a video released by a terrorist organization many years ago and it still haunts me. There was a French dude named Tarary, https://allthat'sinteresting.com/Tarary closing parenthesis, who ate just about everything, including a effing infant.
I was a lot happier before I knew that tonsil stones were a thing.
As a kid I never knew what those stinky rocks that I would cough up were when I had bad allergies. As an adult I asked my dentist and she pulled out the size of a pea. I hate them so much.
Only through Reddit I've learned what these are, and apparently how common they are. I've never had one in my life.
Surgeons used to operate on infants without anesthesia, including open heart surgery. They have stopped this, however. In the 1980s,
I had ear surgery to put tubes into my ears as a young child. My parental guardian opted to not use anesthesia as she was worried I would become addicted to DG later in life. The single most painful moment of my life. It felt like sub-zero ice picks were digging into my ear. It was so painful I had an out-of-body experience. Still did DG later on too, so that didn't really work out at all. Edit. Can't type tonight.
In the effing 80s? This one is the most disturbing by miles.
That tumors can grow teeth.
And other limbs like fingers, hands, toes, and feet. Edit. And a lot people are also saying hair and eyeballs too. So that's nice.
Why did you add on that? Now I gotta live knowing tumors can grow limbs. TT.
I prefer to call them children, but okay.
Seals raping juvenile penguins. Edit. And then eating them.
There is a chance you might fall in a sleep paralysis-like state when under anesthesia. Meaning you'll feel your surgery while being unable to move. I feel bad for Diavolo now.
I've woken up twice under anesthesia and the second time was before my procedure. I heard the doctor and nurse arguing about whether or not to go ahead with it because my heart rate suddenly skyrocketed and my nurse was insistent I was awake. The next day, my entire body was sore from trying to scream.
Got really close to that once. Having hand surgery and they had given me the anesthesia and did the countdown from 100 thing. I'm counting and I guess was just counting in my head when the surgeon turned around with the scalpel. IDK if I could have moved much, but I was able to clearly make a face that apparently scared the poo out of him when he realized I wasn't out. He gives the anesthesiologist this look and suddenly it's all count backwards from 10, and the gas thing again. He cranked that way up apparently. I made it to Tay.
Happened to me when I was 18 and getting a wisdom tooth extracted. I felt the whole thing. Edit a word.
Male ducks are rapists, sometimes to the point where they will literally gang RP females to death.
And female ducks have evolved convoluted vags with various dead ends to avoid being impregnated by rapist duck males. And so rapist duck males have evolved wacky corkscrew penises to impregnate unwilling female ducks with maze vags. Circle of life.
Parmesan cheese and vomit contain butyric acid and it is responsible for the most distinct aspects of their smells.
Also why Hershey's chocolate has its distinctive flavor.
Most schizophrenics kill themselves during a lucid period. I leaned that fact, but I regret the day I understood it. I'm a psychiatrist, MD, and, during medical school, I had the privilege of working at a NGBRI building as part of my psych rotation. My very last day, I stayed late to check up on a man with schizophrenia who was generally pretty disorganized. When I was questioning him, he seemed more lucid, and he mentioned something about studying literature. Having recently been half an English major in college, I engaged him, and he started rhapsodizing about Faulkner, Tennessee Williams, really insightful comments. Then he moved on to music, jazz especially. I spent an hour after my shift with that man, just listening. I passed an attending when I went to write my notes, told him what had happened, awe and joy in my voice. He informed me that the man was a former professor, had 2 PhDs. He said that many people with severe mental illness are living in 1-2 rooms of a mansion, and once in a while, the lights come on in the rest of the house, and you can see what it once was. And so can they.
This reminded me of the last time I visited my grandmother. Her cancer was pretty bad and she wasn't with herself most of the time. She talked about little fairies coming out of the ceiling lights and strange sounds. But for one brief moment she was totally clear and knew where she was and why she was there, the hospital. It's a sickening feeling getting someone back for a split second just to lose them again a minute later.
A friend of mine used to work summers at a camp for developmentally disabled people. He said there was one guy who was pretty much just a happy smiling and laughing guy who couldn't do much for himself and didn't talk. But then he would have these lucid periods. He didn't want to live this way. He hated it. He wanted to die. He could perfectly communicate all the things he felt. These periods were brief and then he would revert to being happily quiet. My friend said it was the scariest thing he had ever seen and that it terrified him on a personal level. I'm inclined to agree.
There's such a thing as 4th, 5th, and 6th degree burns. 4th degree means all the layers of skin at the burn site are gone. 5th degree means the muscle under the skin is damaged. 6th degree is literally down to the bone. Yeah, I was a lot happier thinking 3rd degree was the worst.
Is 7th degree just cremation?
The South Korean government murdered 200,000 girls, boys, adults, and families with zero basis or even a trial. The Bodo League massacre, and they continue to cover it up today and hope the world doesn't find out.
Wait, what? All of those people were killed for no reason?
There were approximately 4 HS suicides in my town a year for 10 to 12 years. The amount of mental health issues was so high that when Stanford came across the street to help set up a mental health counseling service, 500 appointments were made. In a school of 2,000 students. But people were happy because more people went to Stanford each year, 15 to 20 academically pressured, also a few professor children, and Harvard, 15, than committing suicides, so it was ignored until the CDC investigation.
The sound a human makes hitting a concrete floor head first from about 12 feet up. Also the visual.
Care to expand on this story? Fully understand if you don't.
An inmate committed suicide by jumping head first and keeping his hands behind him. Landed straight in his face. I assisted in trying the inquest. I wasn't present at the actual suicide, but I watched every camera angle and clipped the footage for the trial. It was not pleasant.
A Queen of Scotland, if my memory's good, was sentenced to death by beheading. Bear in mind that a beheading was always seen as a quick death. One chop and that's done. She got up to the chopping block and made her prayers. The executioner took 3 swings to properly behead her. I recall reading how she screamed in terror and pain before the second hit cut her voice. I forgot the details of much, but executioners were not flawless in their handling of sentences. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up overnight. Thank you for the awards, kind strangers.
Hence Dr. Guillotine inventing the guillotine for humanitarian reasons. He was against executions but understood that they would happen regardless, so he invented a method that made it as quick and painless as possible.
Mary, Queen of Scots. Elizabeth I regretted having her executed later in her life. Not as bad as what Thomas Cromwell did to Margaret Pole, the Countess of Salisbury. He had her arrested on trumped-up charges for abetting the Northern Rebellion against Henry VIII IRC. She was quickly convicted and sentenced to death. According to Holy Roman Imperial Ambassador Chapois, she didn't know the crime she was even charged with, and her death was among the worst he'd seen. The royal executioner was in the north with the army executing rebel leaders, so they just picked some kid who didn't know what he was doing at all. He missed the first swing and struck her shoulders, and it took a further 10 blows to finish the job.
Fetal abductions aka caesarean kidnapping. I learned about this as my wife was bedridden in the hospital carrying our first. Really struck a nerve.
Why am I willingly learning all the facts that people wish to unlearn?
Morbid curiosity.
That to find people who download CP, police have to upload CP with a virus or something to track them down. Sad face.
Reddit hired pedo apologist Amy Channelaw, and now Reddit is censoring people from saying they hired pedo apologist Amy Channelaw.
Well, looks like your account is gonna get deleted.
The murder of Junko Faruda. I read true crime stories every now and then, but this is by far the most gut-wrenching story I've ever heard. There's a wiki page for those curious enough, but I heavily suggest not to if you want to maintain your faith in humanity.
I have no idea how the parents didn't end up in jail for that one. They knew for like a month that their son was torturing this girl and holding her hostage. Every single person who knew but didn't do anything to try to help her should be in jail for life. There are a lot of pooty parents in this world, but talk about being a complete and utter failure on a whole new level. I can understand loving your kid, but you do not enable that type of behavior by refusing to turn him in. And aren't some of those boys free now? I do not think that anyone who would do what they did to her could ever be successfully rehabilitated. They are literally evil. Most murderers don't keep their victim alive for a month and slowly torture them to death. Even among murderers, these guys were particularly heinous.
The wiki page is a very, very mild version of the torture she endured. I listened to a 2-hour podcast detailing every single day of her 40-day abduction, and I've never felt the need to appreciate my current freedom more. Horrifying.
And what makes it even worse is that the boys who were responsible for her murder were all given a slap on the wrist by the court. All of them are currently free men and living under a new name.
My roommate said, the feeling, sound, and visuals of a dog's skin degloving from its body after being lost for a week and found in a pond. She's a vet tech, she's learned some poo. Edit. Update for you guys asking how this happened or why. The owner had lost the dog. After a week or so, the owner of the dog was cleaning up and landscaping his property when he saw something in pond behind his house. After further exploration, he realized it was his missing dog. The dog was bloated and waterlogged. It barely resembled what he originally looked like. So the owner brought his dog to us for cremation services. Part of our job is prepping the body for cremation. In this case, it was just bagging the body and putting it in the freezer for pickup. When I picked up the dog to put him in the body bag, I grabbed by the scruff of his neck and under his butt. As I lifted, the skin and fur separated from the body. I went from holding a dog to just holding the fur and skin and seeing a completely skinless dog on the ground at my feet. Because of the condition of the body from decomposition and being submerged in water for 7 to 10 days, the skin just slid right off with no resistance. I'm pretty confident I'm going to hell for this.
Blobfish. In their natural environment, they are actually not that ugly looking. The reason they look so horrific in all those pictures is because their natural environment is deep beneath the ocean's surface, and when they're caught they are exposed to catastrophic decompression as they're reeled to the surface.
Dolphins like raping poo for fun. Wish I could unlearn that since I used to like swimming with them.
Also, sea otters sometimes RP baby seals to death, and sea elephants RP penguins. Nature is effed up.
Dolphins, including and especially killer whales, do a lot of really effed up poo, including torturing other animals and each other for funsies.
There was a time in England where you could feed your pet to the lions in a zoo to avoid paying.
The Tower of London did that.
There is a phenomenon known as stone baby. https://www.strangeremains.com/2014/01/17/mommies-having-mummies/amp/closing parenthesis, where a fetus dies and doesn't get absorbed by the body, so it calcifies inside the mother's abdomen. People have been known to carry around these mummified fetuses for 40 years, totally unaware.
So, I am tall. And I was especially tall when I was younger. I was probably about 12 at the time, and a local basketball coach was trying really hard to get me to join the team, and I was very close, but I backed out last minute and I don't remember why, but thank God I did. A few years later, that same coach was arrested for child molestation and possession of CP. I feel so bad for the other kids who just wanted to play basketball.
Guy who I worked with when I was 15 turned out to be a convicted child molester. He never touched me, but he was definitely really uncomfortably friendly around me.
I had a chess club in 3rd grade. Forgot the guy's name, but he played chess with Will Smith and taught Nick Cage or some poo. had chess camps and such. Years later I walked by the TV and saw his face on the news and that he got arrested for molesting kids at his camps and private lessons. My dad always said he didn't like him.
The entire background story of the admin Reddit hired.
Only about 50% of the cells in your body are you. The rest are microbes that exist as part of your microbiome.
In terms of mass, however, almost all of that is your own cells. Eukaryotic cells tend to be absolutely massive compared to prokaryotic ones.
In Japan, when you have surgery, the doctor shows you what they removed and explain about it. It was a bit shocking to see. What? They don't do that in your home country? No sir, they do not.
I'd want that.
It's super interesting in retrospect, but I was really surprised in the moment. It was a chunk in a steel bowl.
Unit 731 https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/unit_731 .
There are corpses on Mount Everest which are used as waypoints. Hey look, there is no limbs, Derek. I guess we're going the right way.
Green boots.
Jesus, that's terrifying.
They also don't decompose naturally in the cold. Bodies that have been there for 100+ years are still relatively intact.
Since the eyes and nose are connected, blood from a nosebleed can travel to your tear ducts and start draining from there. Source: happened to me, so I looked it up to make sure I didn't have to go to the doctor. Edit: a lot of people are asking why I didn't go to the doctor and asking if I'm an American. Yes, I'm an American, but that has barely anything to do with my not wanting to go to the doctor. I'm lucky enough to be a minor and have insurance that has covered all my medical visits, so money isn't my concern. I have a lot of medical issues, spanning from simple painful periods, which are managed by birth control, to 2 different types of migraines, one of which put me in the hospital because it lasted for over a week. I'm always going to the doctor for one reason or another. I also have braces, so I'm always going to the orthodontist. I have very few days when I can just relax without having to go to any sort of appointment and or worry about school. I hate going to the doctor if I don't completely need to. If it's just something I can deal with on my own, I will. A few drops of blood coming out of my tear duct wasn't a big deal. I didn't have a headache, so it wasn't a side effect from my migraines. I experienced no pain, so I knew my eye wasn't damaged. I simply wiped the blood away and it didn't come back. I was fine. And since we're in a pandemic, I didn't want to go out and risk myself catching COVID just to find out that what was happening was normal. Edit 2. Who in the hell sees this and decides, I'm gonna give this my wholesome award? Edit 3. I have made the mistake of asking who would give this their wholesome award. You people are strange.
Yep, it's all connected back there via sinuses and ducts. I vomited violently once from drinking, and a few days later my tear duct got infected. I assume it's because the ducts got clogged some food debris and formed a nidus for infection.
Maybe someone had already said this, but the fact that most people don't want to be around when their pets are put down. Vets have stories about like 70% of the pets they put down being scared and looking for their humans and not seeing them, and dying and afraid and alone. This haunts me. Edit. Thanks to everyone for commenting on this and the awards, not what I would have expected, or wanted, to get awards for. This definitely is the thing that I most want to unlearn. It's something I read years ago, and when I went looking this morning, since this got so much attention, the things that I found tend to have even more shocking numbers, 90%, but also seem to be largely based on people's experience rather than an official study or survey. It's been really lovely to hear from all the pet owners who have made sure to be there for their pets, and even nicer to hear from the people who are skeptical. Several vets and people who work in vets' offices have said that this isn't their experience, and/or that they make sure that they are there cuddling and loving pets when owners are not able to be there. So in the end, I'm going to try to believe that this number is an exaggeration to encourage people to think about and do right by their pets. And it sounds like people really do largely step up. Finally, for the few people who have commented who have not been able to be there, whether because it happened too fast, COVID restrictions, or even because the grief was just too much, please don't be too hard on yourselves. Pets are so good and pure and true, and it is human and reasonable to find losing one overwhelming. And another thing that a few people from vets' offices have said is that pets seeing their humans upset can upset them as well, which just makes the whole thing more awful. So I save my harshest judgments just for the, hopefully, few people who are blasé about leaving their pets.
I've heard this too, and it's awful. A lot of vets can actually come to your house to put your pet down, so it can stay in a stress-free environment and you can say your goodbyes properly. My old cat Beans freaks out if put in a car, and I don't want that on her last day. Edit. Please no more replies about your animals being put down, it's making me sad lol.
I've gone to the vet twice in my life so far to have a pet put to sleep, and long after I've wondered if the doctors working there would be annoyed by me bawling my eyes out and holding them while it happened. I feel a lot better knowing I was there for them instead of leaving. This might be the most heartbreaking comment I've read in this thread. Every time you walk into a stinky public bathroom, you are inhaling tiny bits of strange people's poo. Right in your mouth.
The old fecal sprinkle.
I believe the scientific term is farticles.
Manatees have vags that are the most anatomically similar to humans. Manatees may also be the inspiration for myths about mermaids, beautiful half-fish women that lured sailors to their deaths. Connecting those dots have been mentally scarring.
Have y'all not heard the phrase, any port in a storm?
God, I can't imagine the level of inebriation needed to be like this sexy siren seduced me, and I lost all control, while effing a manatee. They're one of the least sexy animals on the planet, lol.
The only part of your reflection that you can lick is your tongue.
This bothers me more than it should, goddammit.
Just gonna toss out an eye bleach for those of us who read too much of this thread.
A dingo really did eat her baby.
There is traces of plastic now being found in umbilical cord's nauseated face.
Great, now I have to remember to recycle umbilical cords.
Yeah, we all have microplastics in us, unfortunately.
People who fell or jumped from the Twin Towers hit the ground at nearly 120 miles per hour.
You need to fall for about 12 seconds to hit terminal velocity of 120 miles per hour. This requires 450 meters of height to achieve. In order to hit that speed, you would have needed to have jumped from pretty much the top, within the top 100 meters, anyways.
Without mucus, your stomach would digest itself. Also Junko Faruda.
Torture exists in this reality, and that the human body can survive well past many tortures until the end.
It takes 3 full rotations to remove the human head because of the skin's elasticity. Edit. How is this popular? You're telling me that people don't know this fact?
Until the cranial screw top was created.
That's useful, not disturbing.
Pretty much anything about prions. Edit. Wow, this blew up. And it's my first awarded post. And on my cake day, too. Smiling face. Also, SO2X Files and Our Town for teaching me about prions in the first place. Charco Chicken, anyone?
All the other posts. Disturbing. This post. Fear.
Does anyone want to explain what prions are, or should I live in blissful ignorance?
Highly infectious, can take years to show symptoms, impossible to cure, and nearly indestructible. Prions are so much scarier than viruses. It's like they aren't even made to try to reproduce, they just exist to cause organisms to unravel.
This is explicitly a post full of things people wish they never learned, and I and thousands of other people clicked anyway. We hella dumb.
A man named Pel-Olan slit his wrists and then shot himself in the head, and a photo of his dead body was used as album art.
Greater Than the album is infamous and controversial for bearing a photograph of vocalist dead, per Yngwie Olin, shortly after his suicide in April 1991. 6. The photograph was taken by guitarist Euronymous, Oyston Arseth, shortly after he entered the cabin the band shared and discovered the body. 7. Greater Than Euronymous took bits of Dead Skull and made them into necklaces for members of the black metal scene, including the band's drummer Hellhammer. What in the F? Greater Than Necrobutcher, the band's bassist, was so disgusted with Euronymous' actions that he left Mayhem. He was replaced by Burzum's Varg Vikernes, who murdered Euronymous 2 years later. Yup, that's karma.
Can't ever know what the people around you are capable of.
Your face has tiny microorganisms. The face mites. They live in hair pores and eat the sebum. At night, they go to the surface and woohoo, laying eggs in the pore. These are not to be confused with the bacteria that cause acne. They actually help regulate the output of sebum in your face. Good to know these worms are helping out. But now I'm aware of the multiple microscopic parties.
Learned this from mental health nursing. To cure mental illness in females, way back when, probably 1800s, early 1900s, UK doctors set up clinics where mentally ill women would come to get touched. Women would go from clinic to clinic not just because it felt great, but because they thought it was the cure for their mental illness. Doctors eventually couldn't keep up with the demand, wrist cramps as you could imagine. This led to the invention of the dildo. It's not so disturbing, just downright weird. Wish masturbation really was the cure, we'd all be pretty happy if it was. Edit. Absolutely my bad, I definitely meant vibrator and not dildo.
Someone mentioned CP, but there's also videos out there of care home workers raping elderly women who don't have the mental capacity to consent. Also animals, most often dogs or horses it seems.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.